All right, hello, Reedsy viewers. Welcome to ReedsyLive. I am writing coach, author, ghostwriter Kevin T. Johns. Thank you so much for coming to today's presentations. And the topic we're going to be covering is how to create and stick to a regular writing schedule. I think it's one of the most important things for a writer. And as I was saying near the beginning, I thought as a writing coach, a lot of what I would, or the majority of what I would be doing would be teaching writing craft. But what I've found is that the majority of what I'm doing is actually supporting people in the development of their plans and their scheduling and helping them to stick to it and providing some accountability there. So if you are watching this presentation right now and you're not making the progress that you want to make in your writing, there's probably two major reasons for that. One is that you don't have any stakes. There is nothing at stake if you don't do the work, if you don't achieve your goals. There's no accountability in place to keep you on track towards achieving your goals. So we're going to talk about, because that's part of creating a regular writing habit, is creating stakes and having those things in place to keep you on track. And then the other thing is just that you probably haven't made writing a habit yet. It's not ingrained into you yet the way other habits are. And I think these two factors are two of the hugest things preventing writers from achieving their goals. I work with writers every day, and the things I see time and time again are no stakes and no habit formation yet. So we're going to talk about all of that in the context of how to create a regular writing schedule. So the agenda for today's presentation, I'm going to break it up into four things, okay? So we're going to look at habit formation and something I call NNWT. That's an acronym. I'm going to spell that out for you. Scheduling. That's kind of the overall topic here. We're going to dive a little deeper on that, talk about the importance of scheduling your writing. We're going to look at how to make your writing sessions super productive, because even if you stick to your schedule, if you're not getting a lot done in those writing sessions, it's all for naught. And maybe I said not because Amy from Nottingham just joined. So welcome, Amy. So glad to have you here. And then I said there was four different sections, right? So the final section is sticking to your writing plan. So once you've created a plan, how are you going to ensure that you hit those milestones along the way and achieve your goals at the end? So I said NNWT and habit formation is where we're going to start. So habit formation is so important. We want to reach a point in our writing where it comes to us as easily as brushing our teeth. This is the example I often use. You don't get motivated to brush your teeth. You don't get jazzed up, or you don't need the muse to inspire you in order to brush your teeth every night and every morning, right? Maybe even after lunch. You just do it because it's become a regular habit. It's become part of your ingrained daily activity. And that's the stage that we want to get to with our writing. We want to do it so regularly that we don't need to rely on the muse to inspire us. I write nearly every day, whether I'm doing freelance writing or working on a novel or ghostwriting for someone, and I rarely am enthused about it. I'm excited about it. I love the work that I do. I love to write, but I don't need the muse to inspire me to do it because it's part of my daily ritual. It's part of my daily habit. In fact, just the other day, yesterday, as I mentioned, M School came out like 2 weeks ago, and I said, I'm not going to start my next novel. I'm going to focus on my clients for National Novel Writing Month and really support them. But then the muse did hit me, and I couldn't get it out of my mind, and I actually started writing my next novel. But that was a really rare instance where I was like, inspired. I had to get those words down. Most of the time, I approach my writing in the way that we call going pro. And what going pro means is not waiting until everything's perfect. Not waiting until the kids are in bed and the dishes are done and the moon has aligned and everything in your life is perfect. Now you can go do your writing. Going pro means scheduling in and doing it on a regular basis, whether you feel like it or not. Okay, that's one of the big differences between a hobbyist and a pro. A pro gets the writing done no matter what. And the way I recommend doing that is, as I said, NNWT. And NNWT stands for non-negotiable writing time. Okay? And what we mean by this is exactly what it says. This is time that you schedule into your day to do your writing that's non-negotiable. So you're not waiting until you're inspired or you're waiting until the kids are in bed. It's 7 in the morning, 3 days a week, or it's over lunch hour, 5 days a week at work. It's going to be different for everyone, but the point is that it's a sacred time that you've scheduled into your life to do some uninterrupted writing. And so that means your friends know, your family knows you're not going to go to the movies, you're not going to get pulled into a meeting or whatever. It is a part of your life, and you are going to guard it as sacred time and space, because if you don't, that time is going to evaporate. Life never plays out the way we expect. Things never align perfectly. And if we're going to wait for those moments to do our writing, we're never going to achieve our goals in terms of writing something like, say, a novel, a long-term novel, a big project where you're going to need to put in hours and hours of effort. You need to protect that non-negotiable writing time. And how you protect it is our next topic that we're going to move into. Our second topic here, scheduling. Okay, so non-negotiable writing time isn't saying, oh, I'm going to write 2 days this week, probably, if things free up. Non-negotiable writing time is scheduled into your calendar. You get out your iPhone and you add it there. You write it up on that old-fashioned paper calendar hanging on the wall. I don't care how you do it, but it's there in your schedule so that everyone in your life, included you, knows that that's what you're going to be doing during that block of time. And I think there's a lot of things that can be carried over from the world of fitness into the world of writing and productivity. And one of them that I think is great is the 2 in a row rule. And what the 2 in a row rule says is you're going to miss a workout. If you're trying to go to the gym 3 days a week or 4 days a week or twice a week, whatever it is, once in a while, the car is going to get a flat tire. There's going to be a storm and a blackout, whatever. Something's going to happen and you're going to miss an exercise session. It just happens. But the 2 in a row rule says don't miss 2 sessions in a row. And it applies to writing and non-negotiable writing time just as much as it applies to getting your butt into the gym. Because the problem is, if you start to miss more than 1 day in a row, you're developing a new habit. Remember, what we're talking about here with this non-negotiable writing time and scheduling writing into your calendar is creating a regular writing habit, creating that habit circuitry in your mind where your brain switches over and says, yep, I'm into writing mode now. And that takes time and that takes effort to create that type of habit. And so if you're going to start missing sessions, you're creating a new habit. So yes, life gets in the way. Yes, we miss things once in a while, but don't miss 2 in a row. Get back on the track, get back on course so that you can get that habit going and keep moving towards your goals. And a really great way to keep track of your writing, of your process, of making sure you're moving in the right direction is using word count goals. Now, what we mean by word count goals is that when you sit down to write, you're not saying, oh, I'm going to write whatever I feel like today. I'm going to just write for whatever. You say every day, or not every day perhaps, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to write 1,000 words. And you keep your butt in that chair. Oh, I got a little thing popping up. Sorry, guys. You keep your butt in chair until you have that word count down. And how you determine what your word count should be is dependent on a lot of things. It is dependent on how many words you can get written, say, in an hour. It's dependent on what the project is that you're working on, as well as what the timeline for that project is. But what I've done is I've developed a formula, a mathematical formula, to help you guys figure out what you want to be writing on a regular basis. So I know you guys are like, you're writers, right? You guys probably studied communications or English or whatever, right? Here I am. I'm going to come at you guys with some math, but I assure you I'm not very good at math. So it's very simple and you can do it, but it can be hugely effective in figuring out what your goals need to be. So I have a little chalkboard here. Let's see if we can make this work. A divided by B equals X. All right? And so A is the number of the number of words that are your goal for the project. So say you want to write 50,000 words for a novel. So this number is going to be 50,000. Okay? B is going to be the number of days towards your deadline. Okay, and so part of this process is creating a deadline. So let's say you want to write a 50,000 word novel in 90 days. So we're going to put 90 here. Okay? And so what this works out to is 50,000 words divided by 90 days, 555 words a day. 50,000 words in 90 days means 555 words every single day for 90 days to achieve your goal. Now, maybe you don't want to write every single day. In fact, I usually don't recommend it. I recommend some rest days as well. But what that means is that you can do something like, how many words is 555 words times 7? Because that's going to give you your weekly total. So that would work out to 3,385 words a week, I think. And then you can work with that. You can say, okay, I know that my writing schedule, my non-negotiable writing time is 3 days a week. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays at 7 in the morning until 8 o'clock. And what that means is I need to write 1,300 words in those 3 sessions to achieve my goal of writing a 50,000 word book in 90 days. Okay, so maybe it came across as more complicated than it need to be with the backwards writing, but what I'm getting at is when you can identify your daily word count, it makes it really easy to keep track of whether you're moving at the pace that you want to move. And rather, instead of just saying, oh, I'm working on a book and I hope to be done sometime next year, you can say, I'm working on a book, I'm 20,000 words in, and it's going to be completed at 60,000 words next August, or whatever, right? You can have a critical plan in place so that you can measure your progress and you can know whether things are on track or not. Because if you're not tracking in that manner, it's really easy to fall off course and suddenly 2 months have gone by and you haven't made any progress on your novel. Okay, so I really encourage you to set daily word count goals and figure out what that is going to be to add up to your total word count. And obviously, especially with an author who doesn't have a contract yet, your deadlines that you create and your word count goals and your estimates for how long your book is going to be are all just that, estimates. But it's better to have an estimate in place to know the general direction that you're going instead of just sitting down and writing and having no clear path on where you're trying to get to. Now, this whole word count thing, it works primarily for a first draft. It's in that phase where you're just trying to get ideas out of your head down onto the page. That's when word count tracking can be really valuable. When we start moving into other drafts where we're in the revision phase, you might want to shift over from tracking word count to tracking hours worked, because you might work 2 hours on a chapter and delete 50 words, and you don't want to track that you're moving backwards when actually you've made great progress and you've really improved that chapter. So when you're in that revision stage, start tracking hours rather than tracking word count. And don't get too wrapped up in this stuff. Like, the words don't really matter. They're a number on a page, or the number of hours worked don't really matter. It's the quality at the end of the day. But what these metrics do is give us a tool to track progress along a path towards a goal, right? So that's why we're talking about this stuff. Tracking your hours isn't going to make your book better or worse, but it's going to make you a better writer because it is going to help you stay on track and achieve your goals. Now, as I said near the beginning of the presentation, we want to make sure that our writing sessions themselves are as productive as possible. All right, so let's say you've got 3 writing days a week. What are you going to do in those writing sessions to make sure you can get the most effective writing done possible? And something I highly recommend is thinking out what you're going to write before you write it. And I know there's a lot of pantsers out there who say they just have to sit and let it flow out of their fingers or whatever. But even if you don't consider yourself a planner, I still think you want to do something like brainstorming before you start writing. Because even if you're writing something like a blog post, let's say you want to write a blog post on success, okay? Instead of just sitting down and saying, I'm going to start typing away about success, just do a little mind map, a little brainstorm that says, what does success mean to me? Maybe it means respect. Maybe it means fame. Maybe it means satisfaction, right? Get some words like that down. Well, now, fame, wealth, satisfaction, these could all be chapters in an article or a blog post, or paragraphs in an article or blog post, or chapters in a book, right? The idea is that when you do a bit of thinking beforehand, when you put your butt in the chair to do your writing session, you're actually going to be writing and not thinking. Okay, we're trying to get away from that thinking phase, put that over here, so that when we come to write, we're actually putting words on paper and we have at least a general sense of where we're going in the article we're writing or the chapter we're drafting, whatever. Something I would highly recommend also, segmenting out your research. It's so easy to use research as an excuse not to write. All right, as a writer, there's a bunch of writers in here right now. You guys probably all know writing is the hardest part. Writing is always going to be the hardest part. And so something like research that you can justify to yourself is a really easy way to procrastinate. And yes, some articles require research. Yes, some novels require a lot of research, but that has to be its own contained thing. It can't be something that sneaks into the middle of the drafting process. And I can tell you, even as someone who blogs a lot, the average blog post is going to have 3 or 4 or 5 different links in it. It's so easy in the middle of the drafting of a post to go, oh, I better go to that site and grab that link. And oh, look at this interesting article here. And oh, someone's on Facebook doing a Facebook Live. I better go check that out. And you go down that rabbit hole of the internet and you're lost, right? So segment that out, grabbing the links into a different session than doing your writing. And, there's this kind of, quasi-scientific theme behind all of this, right? That this habit formation stuff is about making connections in our brains. And there's also this belief that our left brain is more of our focused, logical brain, and our right brain is our creative, wild, exciting brain. And I think as authors, we're using both of those, right? If we're going to tell a logical story that makes sense and grips people and moves them, you're going back and forth between those two brains. But I think maybe on a metaphorical level, we can say that our right brain stuff, our creative time, is the brainstorming, is the research, is the plotting and outlining and all of this prep work that we do over here. And then the left brain stuff, the worker bee stuff, is the writing itself, getting down to getting the words on the paper. So I would highly recommend you be conscious about what phase or which brain are you in? Are you doing that creative thinking right now? Or are you getting the words on the page and telling the story? Because when we're going back and forth between both, which we do, unconsciously, but if you're doing it all over the place in an unstrategic manner, it's going to prevent you from making progress. Something else that you can look at in terms of being productive in those non-negotiable writing times is just the environment that you're doing your writing in. Some people write really well in a coffee shop. They get off on the noise and the excitement and people coming around, and it stimulates them and they like it. For other people, that's a totally distracting environment, and they want to be at home where they can shut the doors and focus and get their work done. So the point is to know what works for you. There is no secret answer to what's going to make you a superstar writer other than hard work and perseverance. Everyone has their own things that work for them, but the point of, or one way to improve yourself as a writer is to be conscious of what works for you, know where you get your best work done, and then try to schedule your writing times around those environments. And you can think about other elements within those environments that you can control. Even if you are only able to do your writing at lunch hour where you're stuck at your work, well, there's still some other things about that environment that you can control, even if you can't control the building or the loud cubicle person next to you or whatever, right? Things like music. Some people find music very helpful in terms of drowning out the world, of focusing in on the writing. Some people like to write with songs with actual words and lyrics, but what I recommend is just going to like YouTube and typing in study music or alpha brainwave music. There's this whole genre there of kind of background droning new age music, and it can just be a great way to stimulate the brain and turn out off the world and get to writing. Something else to think about is the temperature of the room that you're in. If you are at home and you do have some control over that, we tend to be more focused, more effective in a cooler environment. If things are nice and warm, you kind of want to relax and take a little nap, right? So you don't want to be writing in a super warm, comfortable environment. Put things a little bit on the cool side, and make sure that you have drinks, right? Whether it's tea or coffee, or I got a water right here. You want to keep those refreshments with you so that you're not interrupting your flow state to go grab a drink. And you also want to eat real food. You don't want to eat highly processed, high sugar, carbohydrate, junk food. If you are going to be eating, eat some good healthy food, meats, vegetables, fruit, the things that nourish your body. Now here's a really tough one. Turn off the internet. Most of you probably aren't going to do this, but maybe some of you do have the discipline. When you're doing your non-negotiable writing time, the biggest distraction is going to be the internet. It's going to be social media. It's going to be email, Facebook, Twitter. All of that is going to try to pull you away from your writing. So if you can disconnect the Wi-Fi, or there's even some programs, I think there's one called Freedom, that you can use to actually shut down the internet for a period of time, do it. You're going to get more writing done without the pull and without the distraction of the internet. Something else I recommend is doing a bit of a warm-up. When I go to a hockey game, I always want to arrive early because I want to see them do their warm-up. They go out and they play and they throw around pucks and they have fun for about 20 minutes before the game starts. They leave the ice, they clean the ice, then they come out for the game. And I think too many writers just sit down and want to start the game, right? They just want to go right into it. But our bodies and our minds need time to warm up as writers the same way they do as hockey players. So, something I recommend is starting with some free writing. Just do 5 minutes of jotting down anything in a notebook just to get ideas out of your head. And then try transitioning into some journaling. So instead of going just from whatever pops out of your head into something a little more organized, whether it's a productivity journal, a gratitude journal, or just a diary of what you're thinking about in your life right now. It's just a nice transition out of that getting words on the page phase and into more organized thinking. And then out of that journaling, then transition into your writing. And just give yourself time to warm up. Something else to keep in mind is that if you're one of those writers who likes to do really long writing sessions, take conscious breaks. And what a conscious break is, like we're talking about this whole thing, it's about scheduling in those breaks. You guys probably have heard of the Pomodoro method at this point, which is, I think it's 25 minutes of work on, and then you take 5 minutes rest, and then you return. And it's just to give your body the opportunity to move around, to stretch, to get your head out of the work, and then come back to it refreshed. And I know sometimes we don't want to break the flow state. We want to stay in there in the writing, but then we can find ourselves exhausted or drained at the end of a writing session. And you don't want that. You want to be kind to yourself, and you want to keep yourself energized and motivated and feeling good. So schedule in those breaks. Our final section here that we were going to talk about, we've talked about non-negotiable writing time, scheduling things in, making those sessions as productive as possible. Now let's look at sticking to your plan. What can you do once you've established goals to make sure that you achieve them, that you stick to them? And one of them that I really like is called visual representations of success. And this can be different for everyone again, but whether it's putting a check mark on a calendar every time you write, or whether it's going into a tracking sheet where you're tracking your word count and putting it in there, some form of physical exercise that and visual thing that you can see that's going to show you the success and the progress that you're making. Maybe it's even just printing out the sheet of writing that you did that day and adding it to the stack. The point is that as authors, especially as novelists or people working on long form books, we work for a very long time without reward and without feedback. And so you are going to have to reward yourself. You're going to have to be the one to congratulate yourself on sticking to your goals and making progress. And there's a great endorphin rush that comes from checking something off on a calendar or putting a sticker on a thing, whatever it is for you. It's going to make you feel good, and it's going to be one of those signals for your habit to keep you on track. Another thing that's going to be hugely helpful is deadlines. We talked about deadlines already, right? Knowing when things are going to be done, because as most first-time novelists, including myself, it can take years and years and years to write a first book, and often that's because we haven't set a deadline for ourselves, and we're just writing into the wilderness and finding our way along, and that's not the most productive way to get your writing done. Finally, accountability. Whether this is an accountability buddy, another writer that you touch base with on a regular basis, whether it's a writing coach like myself, someone you've hired to work with you and to keep you on track, or whether it's a writing group. I also have a group coaching program where we have almost a dozen writers in there, and they support one another and they come together and are those accountability partners for each other. Because the reality is, it's really easy to make excuses to ourselves. It's really easy to tell ourselves, oh, Kevin, you worked hard today. You don't need to do any writing. It's a whole other thing to get on a call with a coach or to go to a writing group and say, guys, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. So that could be a great way to keep you on track. All right, guys. And then finally, just in closing here, believe in yourself. We run into so many challenges. We run into so many blockages in the road to success. You've got to believe in yourself and really dedicate yourself to achieving your goals, because you can do it. And writing a book is a big project and it's a big challenge, but it's not that hard. You can do it if you stick with it. If you keep coming to these ReedsyLive presentations, if you keep seeking out mentors and friendships and communities of authors, you're going to learn the things that you need to learn, and you're going to find success along the way of your writing journey. So thanks, Reedsy, for having me. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Have a great afternoon.